The Bajoran in my room. She just works here.
Good God, man. How do you stay employed? Shoosh. Anyway, hey guys, so welcome to the Pizza Roll Diaries. And my guest today is Steve Atwell, as you guys know him, Krorath. Kapla!
Kapla and live long and prosper.
So, thank you guys for joining us tonight. I see tonight we have, I'm going to try to run through this. We have Dee Dee Myers, we have William Jackson, we have Jim's Landscape LLC #1, and that's all we have right now that I can see. So forgive me, I'm only looking at like one side of the coin. I'm still kind of new at this, so thank you for joining us. I think we have more, but I'm not sure, so that's all I see on my end. So thank you for joining us. And to those who are chiming in later, thank you. So Steve, thank you for joining me. It's been a long time coming to have a one-on-one with you, my friend. As we said last night in the chat, it feels like I've known you for forever. I know it hasn't been, but man, how the hell are you, buddy?
I'm doing okay, and so is Joey here.
Hi.
I'm doing fine. I will not go into too personal, but I'm doing okay.
Good. Well, you saw. Go ahead.
Like I mentioned yesterday, a local member of the Star Trek community, the comic book artist Steve Lytle, passed away. So I'm still a bit down about that because he did do some covers for some Star Trek comic books a few years ago, and we were friends and neighbors. But I've got a positive attitude, and I'm coming along.
Good. Well, we see Matt Lonscare came on. Hey Matt, how are we doing, buddy? So for everybody at home that has chimed in, of course they know you as Krorath, but some people may not know that Krorath is not a Vance Major invention. It is actually a Steve Atwell invention. You cosplayed as him. We met at one of the conventions around here. I forget which one it was exactly. I think it was TopCon, was it? Or which one was it?
It was Topeka TopCon in 1952. No, 2016, the 50th anniversary of Star Trek.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what got you into doing Klingon cosplay? Because as soon as I saw you, I was like, Klingon, I gotta go follow him, and I just started stalking you around that whole place, and it was kind of creepy. I thought you were gonna either pull out a bat'leth or a can of mace. Either way, I was intrigued to be attacked by a Klingon. But what got you into doing Klingon cosplay?
Because my Andorian cosplay, the uniform picked up, and the antennas weren't working right anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But I still got blue makeup and a white wig, and I still have Vulcan ears as well. But I hadn't gotten around to Klingon yet, so.
So you do more than just Klingon cosplay?
I have in the past, yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So how long have you been doing Krorath?
Just about 5 years. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you a quick story. About 6 years ago, for no good reason at all, I'd had the wild idea of translating the song You Ain't Nothing But a Hound Dog into Klingon. And I posted it on Facebook, and one of my friends said, hey, did you know there's a Star Trek fan club in the area that you should be a member of, because one of the ladies that's high up in it works in our building at work. Mm. And I said, okay. So I got in touch with her, and I said, I've been an Andorian, and I'm thinking about wanting to be a Klingon. So she introduced me to another member of the group who was connected to the Klingon fan club. So I joined this Klingon fan club. And one of the only requirement really to any sort of advancement in the group is to have a costume. Mm. So I got a Klingon costume, and then I got a better one, and I've been adding to it bits and pieces ever since.
Yeah, I was gonna say you're one of the ones that, like, before I actually got to know you and understand that there's, I mean, we all knew from DS9 there's, that Klingon rich culture, but like you kind of brought something new to like the TOS version of, that culture, and one of the things that when I had sent you a script, because in my mind I had this kind of, there's really not much of the TOS Klingons, and it's this. You were like, hey, you mind if I rewrite this because this has to sound Klingon,
Mhm.
and I could hear it in the words. I was like, oh man, this guy knows his shit. Yep, go ahead, man. Like, do what you do. But you really brought a sense of authenticity to the role of Klingons. You kind of remind me of like a TOS version of like General Martog, where you know your stuff and you've seen some shit. Is that where your character has come from? Because I know when I write, like that's kind of where I come from. Is that where you do, or what?
Yeah, you understand. I'm a bit older than you. I have
What?
been a Star Trek fan since I was a little bitty boy in the early '70s.
Mm-hmm.
Back when all the Star Trek End the World was the original series and the animated Saturday morning cartoon, and all the comic books and novels, and eventually movies and role playing games, going into the '80s. And I devoured all of that stuff. And I'm as deeply tonight into Vulcans and Andorians as I am to Klingons. Um, and I wrote fanfic when I was in high school of the different characters. I created a whole Starfleet crew. I created a whole Klingon crew. So this is just stuff that's been with me, Star Trek in general, since before you were born, my son. That's just the way it is with me.
So
And
you have your own kind of pocket universe outside of kind of like what I did with Star Trek, you did with Krorath. So you have your own, like when I send you something, you kind of factor it into, this doesn't quite add up with what I have. That's kind of how I do when someone sends me something. I'm like, it doesn't quite add up. Like you have your own way.
yeah, I start with what is official canon, and then I go with what I think of as near canon, which is like video games and stuff that were produced using the original cast, the original writers, the original directors, props, etc., like video games and stuff. And then I go to the comic books and the books I've read. And as long as none of it, you know, directly contradicts what is official canon, I say it's fine, it works, it goes. But you have to understand, before canon became canon, um, Star Trek was Star Trek, whether it was a book or a comic or a record or a role playing game. And when they started doing new Star Trek in the late '80s with the Next Generation, they were drawing from the books, the comics, the role playing games for their inspiration as much as the original films and TV show. So I'm just taking it to the next level, the next degree.
Well, it seemed to be back then, like because I remember when I was, like 8, 9 years old, and we'd go to like bookstores, and you could buy the original books, that were already used for like 10 cents, 15 cents, but it seemed like back then, the sky was the limit, because like nothing had been quote unquote established, so
Right.
that's one of the things where I kind of miss that, where you didn't have people harkening back to, well, technically that's not canon, where it's like those people really kind of disgust me, because it's like they let the quote unquote canon get in the way of telling a good story. And that's one of the things I enjoy, when you and I have just sat and talked, is you have the ideas of what this character is, and you have a backstory, and you have certain things that you're like, no, this is the character. And for those people who don't know what I do, and to enlighten me again, because I love hearing you talk. I really, I could, you kind of remind me of like a fan film Morgan Freeman, where I could sit there and listen to you just read anything, and just it's almost hypnotizing. What can you tell us about the Krorath character? Because this is your time to shine. Tell us about you and the character.
Well, like I say, he originally was inspired back in the 80s. And if I may, real quick,
Sure.
a brief conspiracy theory about Star Trek and canon. Canon did not become canon. It did not exist until Gene Roddenberry died. And there was a scramble for establishing what is official Star Trek and what is not. And that's when the decision was made that only the film and television of Paramount CBS, because they didn't want to pay royalties to Filmation Animation that had done the animated series, or DC Comics, or the Fawcett role-playing game, or Pocket Books. And that's why we have canon. But like I say, before there was canon, that's when Krorath got started. The name Krorath was inspired by two members of the band REO Speedwagon, Kevin Cronin and Gary Richrath. And like I say, reading. Okay, in 1984, 85, published almost at the same time was the book The Final Reflection, which is like the first novel that tells the Klingon story. And also was published the Klingon Dictionary. And also was published the Fawcett role-playing game Klingon source book box module thing, which was co-written by the guy who wrote The Final Reflection. And at the local comic book gaming shop, which is still there, Clint's Comics, 39th and Main, Kansas City, Missouri. I don't remember this stuff. But they're open Monday through Saturday. Give them a plug. I'm sorry, I still have a bit of a cough. I've had a bit of a
You're fine.
respiratory. But they had on the role-playing game shelf the Klingon book box set next to the Fawcett rule book and the Klingon dictionary right next to it as well. So in my mind's eye, this is all together. And of course, there's the comic books on the racks right behind me. So yeah, it was developed out of reading all of that stuff and understanding Klingons from that angle first, and the dictionary and the movies. Star Trek 3 was the last film at that time. So that's where things started as far as understanding Klingon culture and all that civilization and where they go. And I wasn't the only fan of that material, you understand. Ron D. Moore, who became the go-to Klingon writer on the TNG, DS9, and Voyager, he was also a fan and was drawing from that stuff, as was Hilary Bader, who was another writer on the series, who died young. So I'm in good company in the origin idea of what a Klingon is and where Klingons are coming from. But as for Krorath himself, I base, to a degree, his life, his background, his backstory off of my own life and background and backstory. So, like me, both of his parents are musician, actors, performers. Though my parents were divorced when I was a young kid, his parents stayed together. And like me, coming from the heartland of America, Krorath is from the central plains of Kronos. And like me, he has 3 brothers, one of whom has now died. And like me, his younger brother is married and has a child. And it's really reflecting my life, because you write what you know.
Right.
And I don't know why, but for some reason it seemed like Krorath should have a wife and a child of his own. So I started writing that up and decided it's his ex-wife and his daughter. And I'm trying to write some stories about his background, his backstory, his rise and career through the ranks of the Klingon military, and eventually becoming an ambassador. I'm just getting bogged down with dialogue in places here and there.
Well, that's one of the things, like you and I had talked a little bit yesterday. Like, dialogue can be like a lot of fun, or it can be one of those things where it's like, you know, you know, for me, like when I'm out on the floor, like I sit, you know, thankfully we have the masks now where like you can't really see me talking to myself, but like it used to be like when I'd walk, they're like, why is he talking to himself? Oh man, the dude's crazy, you know. But like I sit there and actually hold conversations, because like for me, you know, dialogue is kind of all I know. Like everything else is kind of just like, the setting doesn't really matter. You know, you can have it be on a planet, or you can have it be on a ship, or you can, you know, it's just like, you know, have two people talking. And so to me, talking to myself is kind of the only way I can get through dialogue, you know. But you know, it's one of those things where you're absolutely right. You know, you write what you know, and you kind of draw inspiration from, you know, what you can. You know, like I have no idea what it's like to be a, you know, a 60-year-old woman. You know, like I can't write that. You know,
Right.
but you know, to draw inspiration from things that I've gone through, like, you know, you're absolutely right. And I think it shows, at least when I pass off, um, you know, what I write to you, and you kind of slip it back to me. You know, I feel like two kids in the lunchroom where it's like I pass you a note and you kind of look at it and you pass it back to me. You know, I kind of feel like that, where I'm like, okay, I gave him a pass at it and he passed it back. Did it pass the sniff test, man? You know, when when you get a script from me, and you take a crack at it, is it ever one of those where you're like, doesn't get it, or is it one of those where you're like, okay, I got to reinterpret this? Like, how do you take someone that kind of looks at your source material and then have to kind of give it a second pass? What is it like?
I read it over, and something in me is the character, and I try to like read it out loud, and suddenly it comes out different. It's like a universal translator in my head that comes out in Klingon, but not in Klingon language, but in Klingon culture.
Right. The attitude. Right.
Yeah, the attitude. So, for instance, you write and you say, Krorath thinks that this is a dishonorable thing, and he says, this is a dishonorable thing. I say, no, you son of a targ, your honor will be besmirched for you in 3 generations.
See, this is what I love about you, dude. Like, you know, most people would do that. Like, you know, he thinks this is honorable, but you know, you get so into character, and I love that about you, man. Like, it's one of those things where your character is so charming, yet it's so reflective of what we've come to know about Klingon culture. Like you are the go-to Klingon for a Vance film. It's so great, dude. Like, I love it, dude.
Yeah.
So you've been in how many of my films now? 5 or 6, or
I think like a baker's dozen.
okay. So yeah, I was gonna say, like, it feels like it feels like you're always kind of at least there in the background. Which one?
I've been mentioned in several others too.
Yeah, that's probably why it feels that way for me, because I know that I always try to put like at least a picture up or a reference, or like I always try to do that because it makes it feel like it's a larger universe. Which one would you say has been your favorite?
Even though I didn't do my best job as an actor, because you can obviously see me reading the lines as I go and almost stumbling over them. The Rise of the Tribbles.
Mm-hmm. Oh, well, how come?
It was so much fun, and like I say, when I recorded it, I do not know why I had inspiration to improvise a bit of silliness with the blue tribble that I had, but I'm grateful that you sat through, watched it, thought it was funny enough to stick it on the end of the thing.
Well, I have to say that was my editor. Like I'd love to take credit for that, but I don't believe in taking credit. That's not mine. My editor on that one, like he really loved that one, and I give complete creative freedom to my editors. Like once I pass it off to them, and they're like, they throw something my way, nine times out of 10, I'm like, oh sure, go for it, and he loved that part, and I did too. Like, you know, but again, for me, I'm so focused on like this one aspect. When they say, hey, you know, I really love this idea, we should put this at the end, I was like, absolutely, let's do that, you know. And I think that's one of the I don't know if I would say defining moments for Krorath in my films, but I would say it's one of the most charming. Like, you definitely remember it, you know. You know, it's just such a fun moment, you know, and it takes you, it's so surprising because you're not expecting it, you know. But I wonder if you kind of peek behind the Krorath and see a little bit of the Steve, you know, because you're such a funny guy, you know, because you, me, and Sean went out to lunch, you know, and you're so you're still funny, you know.
I have to say, for anybody tuning in who doesn't know, I am an actor. I am a semi-professional. I've been on stage in production since I was 16, and I've always been a ham. And I started doing improv, which is comedy and acting together, about 15 years ago. So, yeah, I was a class clown. I was always a cut up, and being funny and bringing comedy out, it's my nature, and I can't help it. Sometimes I just can't.
Well, you always have fun, and those are the type of people you want to be around. You know, everyone seems to kind of gravitate toward you because I know, just in the different, you know, every time you're on screen, everyone always, oh, Krorath. You know, you always get a, you know. I feel like if we were in Cheers, you'd be the Norm. You know. So,
Yeah.
but so going back to the, you said you had built up crews. And maybe this is only interesting just to me because I, you know, of course, you know, write my own crews. What was some of the Klingon crew and Federation crew that you've built up? Like, what was some of the things you've built up with that? Because I'm, you know, of course, looking for story ideas. You know, I find that fascinating.
I had the USS Gardner,
Mm-hmm.
which was commanded by a Vulcan, who I don't know why I decided, but he's half Vulcan, half Native American.
Mm-hmm.
And his first officer is a woman from Jamaica, and the science officer is a man from Mali, one of the Dogon people of Mali. And this is fascinating. You should do a Google search for Dogons, because in Dogon mythology, we were visited by aliens a few thousand years ago, and they met the good Dogon people and gave them knowledge of the stars.
Okay.
And for some reason, they have a genetic difference in that everyone only has 2 fingers and a thumb and 2 toes on their feet, like Nightcrawler from the X-Men.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I also had the chief engineer was an Andorian, and the chief, I had a security, was a Japanese descendant of samurai, and I had a helmswoman from Texas. The doctor is from the Missouri Ozarks, and I don't remember about the navigator. I'd have to look it up. But for Krorath in his ship, his daughter serves on board. His first officer, if we can get away with it, he would be from, hang on a moment, from the, what do we call it? Not the FASA role-playing game, but the Prime Directive role-playing game. And his species is the, oh, I've got it here on my computer somewhere. Here it is. Sildarians, and they're described as bear ape creatures.
Mm-hmm.
So almost like a Chewbacca sort of first officer. And the science officer is kind of a ditzy person inspired by one of my friends. I haven't really developed the rest of the crew yet, though I know I need to. But eventually I'll get there.
Well, I think listening to you talk about like the Starfleet crew and hell, even the, you know, the Chewbacca type, you know, on yours, like that's, like it's diversity like that I think is kind of lacking, because when you go, when you go with the, some of the Starfleet ships now, like everybody's just kind of your cardboard cutout Starfleet type, and that's kind of, I think that's kind of what is kind of lacking in some of the Star Trek stuff these days, and again, I love all Star Trek, I don't really shy away from any of it, I mean, there's some that I like more than others, but I think that diversity that you have, you can tell that you've thought it out. It's not just random cardboard cutout, go stand over there. It's something that is well thought out, and I think that not only those characters, but like I said, with Krorath, that was something I picked up instantly with you. It's something that's not just a Klingon. It's something that no, Vance, you can't write it like that. Here's this, and
Yeah.
that's instantly, I trust you with whatever I pass your way, and I think that's something the fans respond to instantly when they see, oh, Krorath is on here, oh, we're going to get something pretty special, um,
Yeah.
and it's
I
become a fan favorite.
Yeah, I address it with the thought that, okay, logically, 200, 300 years in the future, how much will we know about outer space, and how much technology will develop, and how much influence from alien technology will we develop? But I also say, okay, Starship Earth. Well, let's look at the actual facts and figures of population of Earth today. How many white people with American accents are we really going to see on board ships that are drawing from the entire planet,
Right.
let alone the entire Federation? If every world in the Federation is as diverse as Earth, because I don't believe in monocultures. I don't believe every Klingon is a carbon copy warrior. I don't
Right.
believe every Vulcan is nothing but pure logic. That just doesn't make sense. Because believe it or not, currently, planet Earth, yes, we have space age technology and we're sending up satellites and exploration craft every day, but we also still have Stone Age people living in caves and in the jungles in the deepest, darkest parts of our planet, living beside each other. So, as technologically advanced as we are, species wise, we're not. Um, and I don't want to get political, but we see every day in the news that there are still a lot of ideological differences going on
Right.
in our country alone, let alone the world. So
Right.
the idea of a monoculture, the idea that everyone is going to come from the same region of any planet, have the same accent or similar, um, same skin tone, same body type, that just doesn't make sense to me. And I'd rather see the diversity than give the diversity.
Well, that was one of the things where I remember when Tuvok came on Voyager, and everyone's like, "A black Vulcan? What is this? This is heresy!" And I'm like, "Why? What's the? Just let it be what it like. Who cares? Like, come on, really? And they were trying to get there. Well, technically, because they have green blood, they can't have. And I'm like, hold on, hold the fucking phone here. Like, you're trying to dispute the color of someone's skin because they have green blood. Are you fucking serious? Like, this is when you know that nerds have completely lost. This is why people stuffed us in lockers for years, guys. Come on,
Yeah, yeah,
But it's no, I love that. I love that mentality that you have, where it's that diversity thing, and it's just expanded into the final frontier. I love that. That's a really great mentality to have, and I think your outlook on things, because you come from that pre next gen era where there was the sky's the limit, and so many things were untouched in Star Trek. It's kind of like when the earlier settlers kind of looked at the plains and the fields and everything, and they were like, "Wow, there's so much out there left to explore. Let's go." And that's I feel like even though we've come so far with Star Trek and there's so much out there, we've kind of lost something along the way. Some of the mystique. Um,
yeah.
you know.
And but don't forget all the natives who said, "What do you mean left to explore? We've been here for 200,000. We've been years. We can tell you what's just down the road,
Mm,
and
mm,
we're going to run into that in space as well."
right.
You
Right.
know. Um, so it sounds like if I send you a script, just to go back a bit, if I send you a script or at least an outline, and say, "This is the scene. This is what I want to have the characters discuss." You could do the dialogue and fill it in. Huh? Huh?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. Send me send me what your characters' names are, their ranks, their positions, everything. So at least I can look at it and be like, wait, who is this? What is this? And then when I'm reading, like, hey, this is kind of what I want the direction of the scene to go. And this is kind of the general, like, give me an outline of like, hey, these are the points I want you to hit, and here are the characters that are involved. Go. And then yeah, it doesn't take me long to write. Um, absolutely. And that's something you should get back pretty quick, when I have time. you know,
Right.
because I work quite a bit. But no, absolutely, I'd love to do something like that with you, especially given the diversity of the characters that you have. Absolutely, dude. Yes, I'm definitely on board.
I will send.
Yes.
I will send you tomorrow a complete outline with some of the scenes that I have completed of the story we've been working on of the initial meeting of Krorath and Menard,
Okay.
which I've been bogged down trying to finish the last 3 years.
Well, I think that's the thing. Like, I think, especially, one, real life comes up. It happens. Um, you know, Stories. There's still stories in my head that I'm like, man, if I could only tell that one. Whatever we can do to make things work to just tell a fun story. Let's make it happen. Because one, I love working with you. Even if it's not in the capacity, because I think like you and I said last night, you and I aren't going to play younger Menard or younger Krorath.
Right.
Like but at least if I could say, hey man, what do you think about this? And you're like, yeah, let's do that. Like, I think there's a lot of people out there that would love to see that story. And even if it's, like, we can film like one scene where it's post COVID, where you and I are sitting there drinking a rock to Gino, and then we can flash back to those younger Menard, Krorath days. I'd love to do something. Send whatever you got to send. Like, let's make something happen, because I think people would love to see that.
Krorath drinks fire wine
Well,
because, and I've explained this. I don't know if you remember, but I've explained it before. I am, for those that don't know, Kansas City. Kansas City, Kansas City is my home. It's where I live. In the Next Generation episode, Fistful of Datas, Worf goes into the holographic bar and orders Klingon fire wine. And he is told, "We don't have fancy European stuff here. This ain't Kansas City." So in Kansas City, we have fire wine.
well, I think we might have to do something about that.
Yeah,
But
if they were to film, if we were to film the script that I have for the first meeting right now, at a certain point into it, it would flash on screen a card that says "Reel 3 missing," and then we'd have the resolution.
right on, man. Well, it is 8:30. We're out of time for right now. I'm about to head back in, go back to work. But Steve, please tell me this is not the first, or tell me this is not the last time that I'm gonna be able to have you on.
Neither the first nor the last.
Good,
Nor somewhere in between.
good. Well, everybody who's paying attention at home, thank you for stopping by. Anytime you guys get to hang out with us is always a pleasure. And Steve, thank you for hanging out with me for a little bit of time. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, my friend. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart.
I just want to try to plug something real quick.
Sure, absolutely.
Tomorrow I'm going to be recording a voice role for an upcoming audiobook adaptation of 1001 Arabian Nights. A bunch of Arabian Nights. I don't remember the exact title, how many nights there were. But so if anybody wants to hear my dulcet tones doing other characters and accents, yeah, I'm playing a pirate captain, I think it is, for an Arabian Nights tale.
Awesome. Well, is there a link to that, or?
Yeah, I have to look it up, but yeah, because I've done a few characters for project already over the past 3 years. So yeah.
Okay, well, shoot me a link, and I'll put that up in the community thing for my channel. So at least we'll, maybe 1 or 2 people can, support you guys, or maybe more, whatever. But shoot me the link, and we'll get it up there somewhere. So cool.
I just understand. I am a semi-professional actor, which means I still have a day job because I can't afford to get by on what I've been paid for acting. But if anybody needs an actor who can do accents and dialects, who knows everything about Star Trek and thank God, who loves acting and who loves performing any chance he can get, please bear me in mind.
Bless your heart, Steve. All right, guys. Well, on that note, again, thank you everybody at home for stopping by. Steve, thank you. Kapla, my friend. Stay in good health.
Live long and well.
All right. Take care, guys. Keep on geeking on.